Okay, this is the last video. I'm going to make it quick because you've seen a lot of long videos, and also because my dog is sitting here staring at me and wants to go out, so I got to make this quick before he starts barking. So I want to wrap it up a quick couple things, because regression is very important in business. We use it a lot. It's commonly used, but we only touch the surface. We only touch simple regression. We only touch simple linear regression, but we can also do multiple regression where we have multiple independent variables, right? In our examples, we only had one independent variable, right? That's not common. Typically, we have a lot of variables that we're interested in predicting an outcome variable. We also only use quantitative independent variables and dependent variables. Well, we can also use categorical independent variables. So instead of saying, the number of students predicting sales, which are both quantitative, we might have categories, right? To do that, we need what are called dummy variables. Say our outcome variable isn't quantitative, it's categorical. Well, in that case, we do have to use a different type of regression, such as a logistic regression, a probit model, linear probability model. So we have a lot of different options and different analytical tools we could use depending on the variables that we have, the types of variables. We also talked about nonlinear data, right? So then we'd have to include different types of functions to account for nonlinear data, right? We didn't look at outliers. So what happens when you have outliers, right? How do you account for them? Do you exclude them, or do you use different types of analytical tools that include them but weigh them less, right? So we have those models we could talk about. Here's an example of a paper that I worked on. It was an assassination paper. So what we wanted to do, right, we published it in the Leadership Quarterly Journal. We were looking at political leaders and really trying to understand, what affects the probability of them being assassinated. So our outcome variable, assassination, it's a category, right? Was someone assassinated or not? So we went through a bunch of political leaders and we coded whether they were assassinated or not, and then we collected a bunch of data on variables that we thought might affect whether or not they were assassinated. So we looked at social conflict. So how much conflict was there within their country? Were they a democratic nation? How much corruption was there? What about the land? So a lot of times you think about in terms of, if you have an unstable society, maybe it has to do with the resources that they have. Are they plentiful or not? So we looked at that. We looked at time, right? The year and the year squared. We included the square term because we found it was non-linearly related. So remember we talked about linear relationships and nonlinear, right? This is our data plotted, right? So this is the probability of assassination over time. So what this is basically showing that there's this nonlinear trend where with time, right, there tended to be a huge drop off in terms of assassination. So just with time, there appear to be less assassinations for whatever reason. We looked at the region. We looked at whether the leader was female or male. So remember I talked about you could have categorical variables, not just in your outcome, but also as an independent variable, right? This is a case where we had to use what are called dummy variables to code for whether people were, the leaders were male or female. Right, so we have all of this is our model. So remember we have our regression model where we had, y equals beta 0 plus beta 1 x plus epsilon, right? Well, this is our error. So we used gamma. We were using different letters, right? We have a different model. So things are a little bit different. Obviously, we have more variables, but you can kind of see that the equation's the same, right? You have your outcome variable y, ours is assassination, right? And you have, that's our intercept right there, standing alone, right? And you have some type of variable x, and then you have its slope, right? Its beta coefficient. So we have those and we estimated all these to be able to calculate them, and we determined which ones were statistically significant or not. And so it's a similar process, but it just requires different analytical tools. But I just wanted to show you this as an example of what you can really do with regression. Like I said, we really only touched the surface. There's a lot more that you can do with it. So I think some of the key takeaways we've talked about a lot, but hopefully by now it's clear that the regression analysis helps us find an equation for a line that best fits the data, and then we can use that equation to make predictions about y from x, which is really important in business, right? Often we want to make decisions, but in order to do that, we need to better understand what might happen under certain conditions. So regression can help with that. We learned about the coefficient of determination, r squared. That tells us how well our data fit the estimated regression line. And then we also tested for significance, so whether our slope was statistically different from 0 or not. We used the t-test, we used the f-test, we showed about how to do those. And then remember, always plot your data, right? Check to see if the data are linearly or non-linearly related. Check your residuals too. They can help determine if you may have violated model assumptions or not. As always, if you have questions, if things are not clear, please reach out to me. Let me know. Use the discussion board if appropriate to kind of maybe use your classmates to better help understand concepts too. I find that, in doing these videos where I have to teach and explain, it really helps you understand all the minute little details. So if you're struggling to understand something, try to pretend like you're teaching it, because if you find that you can't explain something, that's a key indicator that you really don't understand it. So you might want to go back, watch a video again, reread the chapter or a section of the chapter, work on problems, right? Really try to dig into this material deeply to make sure that you really understand it. But again, if you need help, I'm here. Reach out.